In this video, I said April 2nd was one of the best days ever to be on the NS Chicago line in recent years. Yeah, I lied. In this video, we see nighttime trains, the Altoona Landmark Series unit, another Landmark Series unit, trains in Valpo, trains in LaPorte, different trains at nighttime get blocked by trains, we miss very cool trains, and we overall have a really fun time. Our first train would be seen in Panola, Indiana, when we got unexpectedly stopped by 27G and had no idea that this engine was trailing third. This was a very long story that I am going to condense into a very short story. We are currently looking at the Griffith railcam, and you can see an EX-Citirail leading a Progress Rail SD70 something. We were going to Valpo this day, and this train had passed 50 minutes ago at the time I saw it. We went across the tracks when it had passed an hour and 15 minutes ago. A train just passed going the direction it was going, and I thought it was it since it had the same train car at the end. No, I continue west towards Valpo, and I see another Canadian National train, and it happened to be this same train that you're seeing on the screen, so yeah, it hurt to miss this train, but maybe I'll see it later. Although that hurt to miss, I saw this train in Valpo 4 hours later, I guess. Huh? The very next day, I'm monitoring the Chesterton camera, and this monstrosity passes. We immediately jump in the car and head to LaPorte. Long story short, we missed the train. It passed 5 minutes before we got there by looking at the Heritage Inn's report. But luckily, there were 2 other trains coming westbound. The first train we see upon arriving at LaPorte was NS 881. An all-familiar train recently, as we've seen Executive Max and Montana Rail Link units on this one. Today, though, I hated NS 881 because of what happened. Yup, that was NS-277 westbound from Norfolk, Virginia to Chicago, Illinois at Landers Yard. And NS-4004 DC to AC conversion unit, black front, blue stripes, was leading. That makes me kind of mad, but we saw another train later that had an even cooler engine, so that made up for it. The next train we saw was Amtrak 41 eastbound. Notice how we changed spots and it's now dark. We almost never film in the dark, but since it got so dark, we went to the hospital at Tyler Street so that we could get a better shot of this next westbound train that was coming. We ended up seeing some train symbols we never saw today, but the westbound train got stopped in South Bend for 2 hours, which is why it got so dark and getting even darker later in the video. Don't quote me on this, but I think this train is NS-17V CPKC transfer train to Bentonville, Illinois. Again, don't quote me here, but I think this is NS-20H from Chicago, Illinois, just somewhere out east. Also notice that light that just randomly popped up on the train. That's LaPorte Rail fan, also waiting for this westbound. Finally, this train shows up another hour after 20H, I think, passed. This is NS61F with NS8184, the Altoona landmark unit, leading. Only the next day, NS8183, the Chicago landmark unit, decides to come through, trailing on NS28X. But first, NS37M, again, I think, went westbound. Only a couple minutes later, we see the delightful sight of NS-28X and a friendly engineer who waved at us. That's it for this overdue video. Bye.